I like the music. I'm a music freak. Over there. Hi. My name is Thompson.
Go.
That scene. Fear and Loathing Las Vegas with you as the policeman. How did it play out?
Start over. Call my name like you just got here.
Whatever he was, whatever species he was, it was definitely male.
From 1965 till about 1975, that decade, Hunter was a mother.
Could you talk to us a little bit about Fear and Loathing?
Slow down with your talking. Don't make it an interview. Talk to me like you're personal. Like you don't interrupt me, you know?
Hunter was made for the 60s and the early 70s.
He was capable of a verbal menace that I've seen him reduce people to mist in seconds.
Wait, you got to get my attention before you ask me the question. I'm giving you a scenario here.
He's a guy who becomes part of the things of one's youth.
He was the cherry on the cake of fun.
You know, give me something to work with. Don't just shoot questions at me or I can't do it.
He was a phenomenal guy. He was a mad, crazy poet.
Some of the things he said to me that I remember was, you know, it's always good to act crazy first, because later you can appear normal.
Here's the deal. I'm sitting here, I'm out here by myself. You come in and you say, Gary, and I turn and look and sit up, and you introduce yourself to me and tell me what you're doing and ask me if it's okay. That'll be good.
You never had a dull conversation with Hunter.
He was a complete individualist.
Gary?
Hey.
I'm here exploring the writer and the personality.
What is your name?
My name's Tom Thurman.
Tom Thurman. Nice to meet you. I'm Gary.
Gary, nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us, man.
You just walked in, huh?
Yeah.
His writing gave pleasure to a lot of people and at the same time upset a lot of people.
Yeah, Hunter was a deeply serious and kind of deeply moral person, you know, who liked orgies.
You got this lavalier. What's this for?
Just to have two different versions of it.
Good idea. Okay.
Hunter, in his heart and at home and with his friends privately, was a supreme Southern gentleman.
He said, I'd feel real trapped in this life right now if I didn't know that I could commit suicide at any moment.
Gary?
Yeah.
Tom Thurman.
Hey, Tom. How are you?
Fine. How are you, man?
I've been great. What brings you? What? Did you just walk in?
Just walked in.
That's the way I like it, you know. Just ambitiously meet people and be hospitable. What's going on?
I'm
that
directing.
That dog is barking? That is not my dog.
Hunter Thompson, whom I would nominate as this century's greatest comic writer in the English language.
It's an honor for me to be here to discuss our top story tonight, Hunter S. Thompson.
In the labyrinth that American culture became in the 1960s and 70s, Hunter S. Thompson just might have been at the center. And in a way, that center still holds. Straddling the worlds of journalism and literature, politics and rock and roll, sports and film, Thompson found himself at the intersection of some interesting times. But interesting times are the oldest of curses, and mazes have monsters in them too. Eventually, the permanent address for the good doctor became Owl Farm at Woody Creek, Colorado, a literary salon and a firing range, and a home base for his family, his first wife Sandy and their son Juan. But perhaps what Hunter Thompson liked to call the proud highway really started to open up for him when they ran him out of his own hometown. He was born in Louisville, Kentucky on July 18, 1937, the first son of Virginia Ray and Jack Robert Thompson, and was later joined by brothers Davison and Jim. The Athenaeum Literary Society gave Hunter his first readers, but he was already envisioning an audience on a much larger scale. So when officially invited to do so, he left Louisville at the age of 17 with a wild ambition, a fierce discipline, and the absolute conviction that he could write his way forward from there.
The core of the guy, was when he'd say something and then you'd watch him laughing about it to himself and see the irony of his own words at times, and you could see, a sweet kid from Kentucky.
There was this sort of, mutual kind of comprehension of what it means to hail from the dark and bloody ground, That was the term we used. We always called it the dark and bloody ground.
He came from a solidly middle class as opposed to an upper class background. His dad passed away before I met Hunter, and I think that obviously had a big influence on Hunter's upbringing in his adolescence.
Hunter didn't have the discipline in his life growing up that others had, perhaps because his father left him early. This manifested itself in not liking authority.
You were looking for a bomb and a package of cigarettes?
Take your seat.
I'm sorry. It's all right, I'm in control. I'm not sure about these people, though.
Hunter was in my life as long as anybody. I knew him. He's in my first memories from the neighborhood, along with my family.
One of our activities was to go to the Airway or the Uptown Theater on Saturday. One of the characters was Lash LaRue, who did wonderful things with the bullwhip. He took all the guns out of the bad boys' hands.
And I remember taking him home to this house, his home. And I occasionally would walk upstairs to his bedroom. And his bedroom was lined with books. And where I would go home and go to sleep, Hunter would go home and read.
What I learned from Hemingway, mainly. I think Hemingway, the best lesson from him. I had quarrels with some of his prose or writing, here and there. But what he taught me was that you can want to be a writer and get away with it.
He chose, rather than writing original copy, to retype books like The Great Gatsby, and a lot of Norman Mailer, The Naked and the Dead, a lot of Hemingway. He would sit down on an old typewriter and type every word of those books. He said, I just want to feel what it feels like to write that well.
If you type out somebody's work, you learn a lot about it. Basically, it's music, I think.
Yeah.
And, from typing out parts of Faulkner, Hemingway, Fitzgerald. I mean, these were just, these were writers that were very big in my life and the lives of the people around me. So, yeah, I wanted to learn from the best, I guess.
This essay appeared in the Athenaeum Spectator, 1955.
The title of the essay is Open Letter to the Youth of Our Nation. Young people of America, awake from your slumber of indolence and hearken to the call of the future. Do you realize you're rapidly becoming a doomed generation?
Do you realize that the fate of the world and of generations to come rests on your shoulders.
O ignorant youth, the world is not a joyous place. The time has come for you to dispense with the frivolous pleasures of childhood and get down to honest toil until you are 65.
Then and only then can you relax and collect your Social Security and live happily until the time of your death.
Signed, fearfully and disgustingly yours, John J. Righteous Hypocrite. His interaction with society moved from play, experimentation, to antagonism, to aggression. What began to be pranks turned into vandalism, and what used to be handled between parents began to involve the police.
Well, the first real watershed, I think, in Hunter's life was when he was picked up and put in jail.
A juvenile judge gave him the option of going to reform school or going into the military. Hunter selected the military, went into the Air Force, started writing for a base newspaper, and began his journalism career.
I was a juvenile delinquent. I was the Billy the Kid of Louisville.
Growing up in Kentucky, living in the panhandle of Florida, moving to Pennsylvania, then to upstate New York, and New York City, then to Puerto Rico, then living in Bolivia and Brazil and Venezuela, and traveling all over South America, then coming back and living in Big Sur, and then living in Glen Ellen, California, and then going down to Los Angeles all the time, then coming out to Woody Creek. That's about as peripatetic as you can get.
I was evicted from, fired from every job I had. And then evicted from every place I lived. So eventually, I guess in '72, I moved to Colorado. I finally had to buy the place because I couldn't move anymore.
I had witnessed the start. I was sure of that much. But what now? What comes next?
He worked out of his home base in Woody Creek for 30 or some years. He traveled often, for stories, but he always knew he had a place to come back to.
It was a beautiful rural location where Hunter could get away with a lot of stuff you can't get away with downtown, like target practice, blowing up dynamite, blowing up cars. Hunter got a big rush out of putting a half a case of DuPont dynamite, 25 pounds of black powder, 5 gallons of gasoline inside an old Jeep Cherokee and blowing it 300 feet in the air. You can't do that across the street here.
His first wife, Sandy, did a wonderful job of raising their son and keeping the bills paid and keeping the fire going while Hunter was running around and earning their living.
Aspen had this reverse celebrity worship, and that's one of the reasons the Hollywood celebrities elected to come here. And Hunter, being a celebrity in the journalistic and literary world, was a magnet to them.
People were constantly trying to have an audience with him, and Hunter would invite people up. And at any given moment in his kitchen, which was just like a salon, you could have a poet and an actor and a CEO of a company and a state senator. And Hunter liked mixing people up like that.
Everybody made a pilgrimage to see Hunter Thompson at Owl Farm. He was like the Dalai Lama of writers.
He sat in the same chair always by his typewriter. Not a particularly comfortable stool. By the typewriter in the kitchen.
You could even rest that damn camera on that telephone.
No, this is good. I got the good
I know you're into this, you're letting it out, but tell me when you get tired with this.
No.
I'm getting tired watching you after listening to it.
He never liked to be alone. He always had to be surrounded with people, and a dialogue would ensue.
Now, if anybody wants to talk about any subject, I'm here. We have a question?
I came to this valley in 1976 at Hunter's invitation, and stayed at Owl Farm, stayed in the War Room, and fell in love with the Roaring Fork Valley.
It was the Aspen Woody Creek Center of literary and intellectual discussion.
Herman Melville said in, perhaps at the turn of the century, he said, genius around the world stands hand in hand, and one shock of recognition runs the whole circle round. Hee-haw, is that good?
John Cusack told me he went over there one time, and he was expecting Dr. Hunter S. Thompson of lore, and there was nothing going on. There was no booze out. And he said, you know, what's going on? I was expecting. He says, well, son, on the weekend there will be games.
He said, do you drink? Do you shoot? And I said, yeah, sure. He goes, well, I've got some things to attend to, you know, hideous rape case, affidavit I've got to, but do you golf? Sure. So he put me out and gave me some whiskey, a shotgun, and he had on his porch a game called Shotgun Golf, where he had, you know, back where the monument is now, he had a little, you know, green he had set up, and you'd take a bucket of balls and you'd hit the ball out, and if you could blow the golf ball out of the sky, then, you know, that was fair. So it was kind of a pitch and putt with shotguns.
He always had his home base in Woody Creek. Any time in his life, whether he was traveling or not, he always had a sense of a home base.
During those years when Hunter was spending day after day on airplanes, checking in and out of hotels, interviewing people who were on the front page, he wrote this: "My main luxury in those years, a necessary luxury in fact, was the ability to work in and out of my home base fortress in Woody Creek. It was a very important psychic anchor for me, a crucial grounding point where I always knew I had love, friends, and good neighbors. It was like my personal lighthouse that I could see from anywhere in the world, no matter where I was or how weird and crazy I got. Everything would be okay if I could just make it home. When I made that hairpin turn up the hill onto Woody Creek Road, I knew I was safe." The word is Gonzo. It helped push Hunter Thompson into prominence, and it dogged him to the very end. He created a character, an attitude, a voice, and arguably a genre to deploy it, an audience to enjoy it, and an entire era to go along with it. At a pivotal moment in the American experience, he minted sentence after sentence that were more furious, funny, and just plain fast than anything else you could get. Many of us discovered him in Rolling Stone magazine, where Thompson formed a fruitful but combative relationship with editor Jan Winter. But the real birth of Gonzo came in the spring of 1970. To find his working method rendered whole, Thompson would have to return to Louisville and make the acquaintance of a seemingly buttoned-down Welsh illustrator named Ralph Steadman. The piece was called "The Kentucky Derby is Decadent and Depraved." The collaborations and the co-conspiracies would continue to the end.
From 1965 till about 1975, that decade, Hunter was a mother.
In 1970, Ralph Steadman, naive English artist, came to Kentucky to meet up with a Southern writer and interpret the Kentucky Derby. He knew nothing of Hunter. Hunter knew nothing of Ralph. And they kind of met, and it was a drinking binge.
That was my first visit to America, and I hit a bullseye. First time I found the most strange man in America. You know, it could have been anybody. You know, sort of a writer. Might have met Tom Wolfe.
When I wrote the introduction to the new journalism, which was kind of my manifesto on nonfiction, and I included him as part of the band, and his response was, "No, I write Gonzo."
If you're thinking about the Cultural Revolution, the upheaval of the late 60s, early 70s, he was not only reporting it, he was part of it.
I am a professional journalist, and I know the difference between a secondhand story and one of aggressive first-hand involvement.
What we were looking for in the Kentucky Derby was actually the decadent, depraved face of the Kentucky mint julep crowd, you know.
And he injected himself very much into his reporting, so the stories and he were almost one and the same.
After a week of wanton excess, the two of us went through it all, got ourselves in such a hell of a state, and looked at ourselves in the mirror and realized, there's the decadent face. It was us.
I feel like a prisoner now. Not a prisoner, an embedded journalist.
He ended up talking about us. So he had started to invent a scenario for his own kind of writing.
I think his main energy source was taking what we called journalism and making fiction out of it.
With an hour or so to kill before we had to catch the plane, we spread his drawings out on the table and pondered them for a while, wondering if he'd caught the proper spirit of the thing. But we couldn't make up our minds.
The truth in what Hunter wrote is in equal balance with the imagination.
His hands were shaking so badly that he had trouble holding the paper, and my vision was so blurred that I could barely see what he'd drawn. Shit, he said. We both look worse than anything you've drawn here.
Where fact ends and where imagination takes over, you know, we never know.
We came down here to see this terrible scene. People all pissed and out of their minds and vomiting on themselves and all that. And now, you know what? It's us.
Well, all right. No much for that. Good.
People ask, did he write fiction? Is it fiction or is it journalism? You know, there's this big blur that he occupied and even seemed to map.
I don't know if there's anybody who was a bigger influence on the way artists and thinkers and journalists saw the world.
He'll tell you the truth, but he's going to tell it to you in his own way. And because he is bodily so present in the story, you know, as a human being, enough to trust his voice, but also distrust and be skeptical at the same time.
Madness. It made no sense at all. I desperately needed the facts.
And he thought, why should I write about something that's sort of less than what I could write about if I don't include myself as this sort of big potato in the stew? You know, I like to say that. You know, there's like a giant potato in the stew, and the giant potato in Hunter's stew was himself.
The important thing was that there was no story until he got involved in it. He really wasn't interested in the actual nuts and bolts of a story unless he was a part of the story.
It's sad. But what's really sad is it never got weird enough for me.
He provoked a situation in order to get a reaction. And once he got a reaction, he knew where he was.
I moved to the country when the boat got too crowded. Then I learned that President Nixon had been eaten by white cannibals on an island near Tijuana. For no good reason at all.
What he was an exhibitionist and a man of enormous syntactical resources.
Most people can't handle the action on whatever they choose or have to call their own turf. And the few who can usually have better sense than to push their luck any further. That was always the difference between Muhammad Ali and the rest of us. He came, he saw, and if he didn't entirely conquer, he came as close as anybody we are likely to see in the lifetime of this doomed generation. Nice piece.
I think he was kind of a beacon for dissent, you know, throughout his whole life. He was a place people could turn to get a moral argument from a immoral outlaw.
I was a good criminal at one point, and probably still am in some ways.
I said he was a fascinating sociological phenomenon, in part because of his capacity to attract so considerable a following.
Obviously, one of the things I have to appreciate about America, if I didn't, I'd be stupid or insane, is that for good or ill, I can function here.
He was an old-fashioned anarchist. He did not believe in institutions, did not believe in, and that meant he didn't believe in even the institutions of the counterculture.
I don't think that there are many societies or social political systems where I could function the way I am now. And perhaps a lot of people would think it's much better. That's the best argument for destroying the system. It gets rid of people like me.
He had a sense of drama. His exaggerations, his hyperbole, his utterly unbelievable itinerary. So in that sense, he expedited people who were looking for dramatic potential.
No one categorization covers this new form unless it's Hunter Thompson's own word, Gonzo. If so, in the 19th century, Mark Twain was the king of all the Gonzo writers. In the 20th century, it was Hunter Thompson, whom I would nominate as this century's greatest comic writer in the English language.
George McGovern and Hunter, are linked throughout history by Hunter's, not only his work, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, but their friendship over the years.
He was always interested in the concept of evil and wickedness, and he frequently saw it in high places that other people had learned to live with.
Richard Nixon represents the dark side of the American dream. Richard Nixon stands to me for everything that I would not want to have happen to myself or be around. He stands for everything that I not only have contempt for, but dislike and think should be stomped out.
For years, I've regarded Nixon's very existence as a monument to all the rancid genes and broken chromosomes that corrupt the possibilities of the American dream. He was a foul caricature of himself, a man with no soul, no inner convictions, with the integrity of a hyena and the style of a poisoned toad.
Tonight, I again proudly accept that nomination for President of the United States.
I couldn't imagine him laughing at anything except maybe a paraplegic who wanted to vote Democratic but couldn't quite reach the lever on the voting machine.
But I have news for you. This time there's a difference. This time we're going to win.
That's as mean as you can get.
He was a villain all my life. He was a villain before he ran against Kennedy, or Kennedy chose to run against him in the 60s, in 60. And the more I knew him, the more I was around him, the more I covered him, the more of a villain he was. He was a twisted beast of a man.
Well, there's no question that Hunter shook up the establishment, including the establishment of journalism and political reporting. And he deliberately did that. He thought they needed to be shaken up.
I've been with Hunter when other journalists followed him around like puppy dogs, serious ones. And it was like he had some magic that they wanted to capture.
The original Vegas, if you get the old Rolling Stone, says by Raoul Duke, because Hunter was afraid he'd get fired for writing that kind of subversive, drug-induced, hallucinogenic, crazy Gonzo prose.
Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail was always mystified me because it wasn't about the campaign, it was about Hunter.
When Hunter's book came out on the campaign, Frank Mankiewicz said it is the most accurate and least factual book about the campaign.
Politicians were hateful creatures that needed put in their place, looking for somebody, a shining light, Jimmy Carter, or in 72, George McGovern.
Hunter had a rare and original insight into the underlying forces that were operating in that campaign.
Human times are what they are, and the need for a poet to kind of name the times is always there. But it's such a rare gift when one comes along that you actually do sort of look, down the highway and you see Hunter Thompson.
Yeah, there's a certain kind of cold-blooded quality in those people, which I can recognize and deal with in other people, but I don't think I have it myself. Well, maybe I do. Maybe that's why I can connect with it.
kids in American colleges don't care about Kurt Vonnegut and Norman Mailer and Nelson Algren. They care about Hunter Thompson. And he was able to kind of recreate a whole new audience for himself in the last decade of his life.
Just as Hunter Thompson intuited the last days of the 60s as the end of the beginning, something about the late 70s must have felt like the beginning of the end. And Hunter Thompson had always been a movie waiting to happen. Released in 1980, Where the Buffalo Roam appropriates the life of one Hunter S. Thompson from the campaign trail to the Super Bowl. Hunter's hottest property at this point was himself. Hunter S. Thompson contained multitudes, and Bill Murray caught a lot of them. Whatever its drawbacks, the film established Hunter as a bona fide pop culture icon, an action figure for the underground.
In today's culture, the writer is not on a lot of people's radar.
Be proud, man. You're becoming a famous writer. The famous Dr. Gonzo.
The writer who used to be the most prominent, sort of the top of the food chain, the cultural food chain, has slid in the pop culture food chain.
I think I better tell my readers right now that I'm no longer responsible for anything that I write from this point on.
He built a reputation so that even people who didn't necessarily read him knew about him or knew of him.
Any writer in America writing popular books was hoping they have a movie adaptation of their novel, hoping that they can get some extra money. Writing's a very hard business, and you don't make very much money.
A writer like Hunter Thompson is going to naturally appeal to actors because on paper he creates for himself such a role, such a dramatic figure, that, as is true of all readers, actors say to themselves with a special intensity, I want to be that man.
Hunter exercised tremendous charm over people when he first met them. And I'm sure he just floored people in Hollywood.
In 1976, Hunter Thompson wrote an essay about Oscar Zeta Acosta, which was optioned by Universal under Tom Mount, and that became Where the Buffalo Roam.
The film really was the building of the foundation of the cult around Hunter Thompson.
I'll just lash together a few raw facts. A little bit of old Negro wisdom. This nightmare is over.
He just captured whatever was going on in the 70s, you know, I mean, whatever was going on, he had that kind of thing that he was the voice of it. I mean, it was part Bozo the Clown, part philosopher, part, you know, he was armed, he was drugged. It was like, how could you not make a movie about that?
I was the second choice. I think originally they wanted Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi to play the parts of Hunter and his lawyer. And when they went to make the Blues Brothers, they had to find someone else. And they asked me and Peter Boyle.
Bill Murray inhaled Hunter Thompson in his research and the way he did. He literally inhaled him like Hunter inhaled an 8-ball. I mean, it was... He became this guy. And I'm not sure the movie ever lives up to what Billy did, but what Billy did was a phenomenal recreation. I mean, it's as if Hunter got inside of Billy like some sick, incurable disease.
Kid, somebody stole my wallet.
He did a wonderful job in Where the Buffalo Roam of really capturing Hunter, and he also spent time with Hunter and followed him around and soaked him up and came back with this great portrayal.
After a few weeks of shooting, I said, you know, there's really something that's not here, you know. There's no scene with Richard Nixon, which is kind of key to the film. And they got a Nixon look-alike guy to play Nixon, and, you know, Hunter, you know, talked with me, and he basically, you know, figured out what this could be. He gave something else of himself and created something for the movie that wasn't there.
Hi, sir. Harris from the Post. Good to see you again. Can I get anything for you, sir?
Well, how's the family, Harris?
Well, the family? Well, that's bad news. The screwheads finally came and took my daughter away. Let me ask you a question, sir. What is this country doing for the doomed?
Art Linson was a first-time director. He's working for a big studio, and John Kay's screenplay feels obliged to try and kind of explain Hunter Thompson in earthly terms. So gives him an office and a kind of boss to report to, who's kind of a caricature of, the Rolling Stone and Jan Wenner,
Yeah. Marty, where the hell you been? We're looking all over for you.
You are not registered at your hotel. Your rent-a-car is reported stolen. Personally, I couldn't give a shit, but you owe me a story.
Is it due? Am I late?
The field day also involved having Art Linson as the director because he didn't know how, he'd never directed before. We took a crash course on the clock, but we kid. Part of it was that there was this freedom, and because Hunter was sort of hovering around the whole production, there was always this feeling that, if Art didn't do right by the production, there'd be serious retribution.
Bill Murray's performance in Where the Buffalo Roam is one of the few things that remains impressive about the film. The other is Peter Boyle's.
Peter brought some sort of solid reality to what was basically, a lighthearted comedy.
What have you done? Gee, she was just fine a minute ago. Oh, I'm eating her cookie. Cook, the bat here is Carl Laszlo.
As your attorney, I advise you to leave this room at once.
He really did believe in the way you treat your fellow human is the way that you're going to get it back, And the people that don't do it have to be told.
The key aspects are all right there in the Fourth Amendment.
Great. Fourth Amendment. A basis in reality. That's good.
Including the need for probable cause.
Probable cause?
Yeah.
All right.
And the right for people to be secure in their home, free from illegal search and seizure. I mean, that's it. That's the big one. It's the fucking Constitution.
One of the things about Where the Buffalo Roam that makes it valuable is that it's a time capsule. This is how Hunter Thompson looked on an April morning in 1980, because this is how you try and explain him to your parents. This is how you try and explain him to a mass audience, because he was still pretty much a cult figure at that point.
Come on, Bronco. We're celebrating. Come on, the story is finished, man. Don't get weird on me now.
I think in looking back on it, it's a nice little moment of capturing the late 70s in terms of a wacky look at what we were looking at 30 years ago, at this guy who was real and vital at the time, and trying to put him in some sort of cinematic context.
When you have to make something that's going to last a long time, you have an extraordinary obligation to be at your best.
Hot damn. So much for the facts.
I remember thinking that Bill Murray was brilliant as Hunter. Way before I'd ever met Hunter, I just thought Bill did a great job. He's just genius,
I've been without sleep for 80 hours, so I'm beyond simple fatigue. The hallucinations have stopped, finally, thank God. But my adrenaline reserves are burning out, and I'm staring straight into the face of a total psychotic freakout.
His literary work is going to have to speak for itself. I can't be a writer in a movie. I can't write in a movie, but I felt like I had to respect his code.
Golly, you hear a lot of savage and unnatural things about people these days. Laszlo and Nixon are both gone now. But I don't think I'm going to believe that until I can gnaw on both of their skulls with my very own teeth.
As the 1980s staggered into the 1990s, actors as a species were increasingly drawn to Hunter S. Thompson, a true friend and the rawest of material. One of them was Johnny Depp. The two shared more than just Kentucky roots. They became partners in crime and cinema. Disappearing into Hunter on film was both an honor and a threat. Johnny rose to that challenge by taking that chance. So in 1998, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas finally made it to the big screen. It would have been easy to drown in the undertow of the wave Hunter had so famously written into life. But they tried like hell to get it right.
The first time we met, it was like the first thing we connected on. It was like, a brother from the same soil. That was our initial buzz.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is about this larger-than-life, self-styled larger-than-life character going to America's larger-than-life city, capital, Las Vegas, and indulging in excess of every kind.
Might be able to squeeze you in, sir.
It then becomes a question of whether you want to share in that pageant of excess.
Suddenly, there was a terrible roar all around us, and the sky was full of what looked like huge bats, all swooping and screeching and diving around the car. And a voice was screaming, "Holy Jesus, what are these goddamn animals?"
He had a romance for the sense of the open road. I mean, the romance for Hunter was a convertible and a pipe full of marijuana and a bottle of Kentucky whiskey, and you drive off with the top down into the great American sunset.
Hustler.
One thing about the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is that it does kind of represent Hunter's life in a way. I mean, he really was on the move constantly. You see that in the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the constant action, and you can kind of get a sense of what it would be like to be Hunter Thompson.
In the case of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, he's trying to go out to the heart of the American dream. He's actually trying to penetrate the heart of the American dream at a moment in present time.
Who are these people? These faces? Where do they come from? They look like caricatures of used car dealers from Dallas. And sweet Jesus, there are a hell of a lot of them at 4:30 on a Sunday morning. Still humping the American dream.
Producing Fear and Loathing was a crusade, was a cross to bear, a cross that I carried for more than 10 years. Even though it took so long to get it to happen, by the time we made it, it felt like we were doing it just like Gonzo filmmaking.
Johnny told me, see, before they made that, he was living in Hunter's basement. I think he got Hunter down, pretty good. I know they were really close.
I was living in his basement, so I was his partner in crime. As his partner in crime, you became the surrogate, Dr. Gonzo. It was a magical time.
I think that that's the mysticism of acting. You seek to become more than you are. Hunter Thompson, as in the role that he created on paper, I think holds that invitation out to a lot of actors, and I think to Depp in particular.
I had all that time with Hunter. It made it all the more easy to become him.
Our trip was different. It was to be a classic affirmation of everything right and true in the national character. A gross physical salute to the fantastic possibilities of life in this country, but only for those with true grit. And we are chock full of that, man.
I got a phone call from Bill, and I said, "What's going on? What's the matter?" And he said, "Nothing, I just wanted to talk to you, because I understand you're going to play Hunter. If you're going to play Hunter, and he seeps into your skin, you will always find yourself becoming him at one time or another for the rest of your life, probably."
Why not? I mean, if the thing's worth doing, it's worth doing right.
The best part was that I had a kind of secret chuckle that I had these two beautiful heartthrobs, and I had turned one into a bald guy and one into a fat guy. He just fell in love with Johnny and Benicio, and here they were playing him and his friend Oscar, and this whole world was coming alive again.
Are you prejudiced?
Hell no.
I didn't think so.
If you're a writer and you're seeing your book being made into a movie, you might have some issues that you may not even be able to explain. But what he loved about the movie was Johnny.
Johnny got him really good in the movement of him.
Those of us who had been up all night were in no mood for coffee and donuts. We wanted strong drink.
The more time I spent with Hunter, the more I appreciated what Johnny did in that movie.
We were, after all, the absolute cream of the national sporting press.
One of Depp's great gifts as an actor, it's the thing that he can trade on, is the fact that he seems kind of ageless. And that spirit that's in him is very akin to Hunter Thompson.
Johnny Depp is the ultimate risk taker.
Johnny Depp can breathe and make you laugh.
He'll do anything.
He had a very particular way of talking, and I think Johnny does a terrific job in the film.
Yeah. Really? All right. Yeah? Why not? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
Johnny Depp is able to be ironic within a role without mocking the person he's playing.
That was headquarters. They want me to...
I think what Benicio brought to the film is something that Hunter knew as Oscar Zeta Acosta, the brown buffalo. He spoke about him as one of the most, loving, sweet, sensitive, smart, funny, but dangerous. One of the most dangerous individuals he'd ever known. So I believe that's what Benicio brought beautifully to the role.
My other favorite moment comes late in the film, which is when he's saying goodbye to Dr. Gonzo. Dr. Gonzo is running up into the airplane, and he says,
"There he goes, one of God's own prototypes.
A high-powered mutant of some kind, not even considered for mass production.
Too weird to live, and too rare to die."
I just love that.
We had looked around for someone to play the cop.
I don't remember exactly what it was. Gary?
Oh, yes, I do now.
Terry Gilliam and I had met before Fear and Loathing. And he called me in to play a highway patrol.
Hey, good morning, how are you? All right, man.
He was driving wild, out of control, stupidly. And I got him off the road and pulled him up and stopped him. And he got out of his car, I got out of mine.
Hi, how are you?
What in the hell did you think you were doing? I want to know.
Walking around. What do you got in here? You got light bulbs, you got soap, you got towels? What are you, a traveling hotel? What is this?
What are you carrying 2 cases of soap for, son?
I want to stay clean.
That's the end of the scene. Terry Gilliam, who is dressed like an Arab sheik, sitting halfway down the hill because the crew couldn't sit up with us because we're on a hill, and he didn't say cut. So I simply said,
"May I have a little kiss before you go? I'm very lonely here."
Yeah, he started talking about how lonely he was out there in the desert all alone. Lonely cop, and he wanted a kiss or something, right?
Picked Johnny up and laid him on the trunk, and there went Gilliam laughing and haunting and rolling down the hill.
A good portion of these critics, were freaked out by the film. I mean, some people walked out feeling, like high, like too high.
I remember saying something like,
"I feel a bit lightheaded. Yeah, you should drive."
It was one of these rare movies where the drug stuff seemed to be real. The drug and the booze stuff seemed to be real.
"Get in."
I remember Johnny walking sideways, going into the casino.
Oh, devil ether. It makes you behave like the village drunkard in some early Irish novel. Total loss of all basic motor skills. Blurred vision, no balance, numb tongue. The mind recoils in horror, unable to communicate with the spinal column. Which is interesting because you can actually watch yourself behaving in this terrible way, but you can't control it.
And buying the monkey, trying to buy the monkey, and things like that.
Listen, let's get down to brass tacks here. How much for the ape?
What'd you think of the movie? About you?
That's funny. Johnny Depp asked me that question last night on the telephone.
I called him, and I said, "Well, what do you hate me?" And he said, "Oh, no, man." He said, "Jesus Christ." These words just flew out of his mouth. He said, "No, man, it was like an eerie trumpet call over a lost battlefield." It really was less of a job than it was a love letter, or a salute.
Hunter gloried in excess and lived for it. The depth of his appetite is legendary, and the word more remains his byword. Who knows what he was feeding? His work, his play, his talent, his addictions, his lust for life. And that life was lit night for day, around a table in the kitchen and over a phone. Hunter liked to keep in close touch and just out of reach. Woody Creek became the center for the maze. For Hunter, the world might be getting a little less interesting all the time, but it was more interested in him than ever. And there was always the business of having to be Hunter S. Thompson, a real man inside a booming franchise, the same concerned owner and operator for these many years.
There was a revelation touch in Hunter Thompson.
A drug person can learn to cope with things like seeing their dead grandmother crawling up their leg with a knife in her teeth. But nobody should be asked to handle this trip.
His was a life of excess. And you name the area, and he was excessive in the way he participated in that area.
How long had I been lying there? All these signs of violence. What had happened?
Anybody who could consume as much as he did is eo ipso phenomenal.
There was evidence in this room of excessive consumption of almost every type of drug known to civilized man since 1544 A.D.
The day always started for Hunter, usually in the afternoon, which started breakfast.
It's a sad state of affairs when this reporter has to go heavily armed to breakfast.
And what a breakfast it is. Still alive, still kicking.
6 half grapefruits, 4 Bloody Marys, a couple of tequilas, pack of cigarettes, and, two pitchers of coffee.
Could I have another round, please?
Of cocktails.
Everything. Cocktails, food, Super Sunday. You got to store up as much energy as you can a day like this.
I start with Chivas and water on the rocks, orange juice, grapefruit juice, coffee. That was it. That was a beautiful spread for him.
He'd order 3 or 4 entrees and eat one of them and maybe eat half of another and say, can you box those up and I'll take them home.
And there would be in the side what he had for every day for years. Fruit. It's all fresh fruit, berries, apples, bananas, covered with a layer of Jell-O and gin.
It was not unusual for him to order most of the things on the menu.
2 more club sandwiches. 1, 2, 3, 4 shrimp cocktails. And 9 fresh grapes.
He ordered 4 margaritas and 6 bottles of beer.
I think if he had actually consumed all the stuff he claimed to consume and done the things he did, he would have killed himself when he was in his 20s.
Yeah, I'm an addict. I have an addictive personality.
And this waitress kind of looked nervously and giggled a little, and she said, "Sir, are you expecting some other people? I can get you a larger table." He says, "Well, I don't want a larger table. I want 6 beers and 4 margaritas. You speak English?"
Ultimately, of course, Hunter Thompson couldn't satisfy his appetite such as there was for life.
But what the hell? You can't win them all.
Hunter spent most of his time on the phone, processing, planning, debating, debating with friends on the phone.
The curse of Wano, you came out to cover the Honolulu Marathon when Nike...
Okay.
Did something go through the window?
Yeah, don't worry about it.
And he kept the hours of a vampire bat. He'd get up around 6 p.m. and go to bed when the sun came up, and he trained his clientele to pick up the phone at 4 in the morning in New York City and not to call him at noon because they weren't going to get through.
The bulk of the friendship always happens between, 12 o'clock at night and dawn on the phone.
I miss talking to him late at night. Getting that phone call at 4 o'clock. I think someone, I don't know who it was, but someone said, now I know if that phone call comes at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be bad news.
Any call I got between 12 and 6 was either Hunter or bad news. Sometimes both. Sometimes Hunter with bad news.
And now when my phone rings at 4 in the morning, it always used to be Hunter. Now I think it's a tragedy, because no one calls me at 4 in the morning unless it's a tragedy. And I wish I had kept all of those recordings, because sometimes I wouldn't answer the phone, and Hunter would go on for 15 minutes.
Whenever one got stuck on something, whether it was dealing with current politics or something creative that you were up to, whatever it is, I could always just go on speakerphone with a drink in my hand
and call up Woody Creek. And whatever it was that came out of a conversation with Hunter, there was something better that would come out of me on the next go around when I was by myself. You know, it was he was a shot in the arm like no other.
Man, it was hard for me to concentrate. That's all I can say.
Hey, drugs are no excuse, John. You know that? I told you that a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
And I pick up the phone and he goes, "What if I just beat the fuck out of you right now? Huh? What if I just beat the fuck out of you right now?" And I go, "Hunter, what the fuck?" Right? And he goes, "Well, that's what you told me the first time I met you, right? Well, what if I beat the fuck out of you right now? Oh, by the way, I just got married."
I think it's important for people to know that even weeks prior to Hunter shooting himself, he was calling Ralph and they were talking about new projects down the road and things Hunter wanted Ralph to work on with him.
Ralph, you filthy little animal. You dirty little beast. Hi, Ralph, it's Hunter. And I have a job for you. This one's going to be for you. I know, don't say it. I'm a little high, Ralph. I've been writing many weird pages on this article for Jan, which is due on Friday. This coming Friday. That's my deadline. Who else but you would I turn to when we want to kick ass? So give me a ring. Thank you.
Next, saved message.
Ralph, something's wrong with my head. I'm seeing golf balls and little green men and yellow raincoats right outside my door and calling my name. All right, let's try to coordinate ourselves here. Yeah, get this fucking thing done in a big way. We're gonna have to make a serious splash with this. And I'm not sure the pig fucking thing is the best. I'm not sure myself. God damn, I wish I could go out and kill some animals. It's almost dawn here, and the first ray of the sun coming over the mountains, I will be out killing things, whatever I can find. So, thank you very much. Good night.
The difference between the public hunter and the private hunter is that Hunter, in his heart and at home and with his friends privately, was a supreme Southern gentleman.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, yeah. I like cheap comforts, mate. Calms me down.
I don't know if that always gets out into his persona in the public, like the Raoul Duke and the Hunter Thompson show.
I have no idea whether you think you're taking or making a film about Duke or Thompson. I haven't thought about it until now. And I'm filling with hate and rage right now just thinking about it. Go ahead.
No one could ever live up to the image of Hunter S. Thompson, not even Hunter.
Right alongside me, this myth is growing and mushrooming and getting more and more warped. And like when I go out to, when I get invited to speak at, say, universities, I'm not sure if they're inviting Duke or Thompson.
Hunter Thompson, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
There was a huge gap between the substance of Hunter and the image of Hunter.
For a business meeting or dinner or even a social occasion, he understood that often the Hunter character was expected to be there, not just Hunter.
The pitfall that any notoriously popular and notoriously well-known artist is beginning to believe your own myth.
He became a prisoner of his own cult, I think, that evolved out of almost, I don't think he realized it was going to take off quite the way it did, or that he would then have to maintain that status.
I have no choice. I have to solve this problem. So I suppose that my plans are to figure out some new identity. You know, I have to kill off one life and start another one.
He was trapped by a mythology he created. I think you would probably admit that.
People had certain expectations of him, I'm sure. And that must have been very difficult. That must be very difficult to have to live up or live down to what people think you're going to be.
In my case, you know, I hate to advocate drugs or liquor, violence, insanity to anyone.
But in my case, it's worked.
It's possible that the compulsion to be Hunter Thompson in every situation backed him into a bit of a corner.
I'm not sure who to be. I suppose that my plans are to figure out some new identity.
His self-hypnosis was a part of his attraction. This is what people wanted, what they expected, and what they got.
He just had to live up to this goddamn caricature, really, that he'd made for himself. And to live up to that caricature became the strain that I think started to lose its fun.
The wild, crazy man, drug addict, this was what people bought. This is what people wanted. This is not what Hunter wanted when he was younger. This was not who he wanted to become.
I'm really in the way as a person, and the myth is taken over. And I find myself, in an appendage. I'm not only no longer necessary, I'm in the way. It'd be much better if I died.
On the 20th of February, 2005, Hunter S. Thompson killed himself. Everybody has his reasons. Being Hunter, he left a note. It stands on the page like a poem, and it reads, "Football season is over. No more games. No more bombs. No more walking. No more fun. No more swimming. 67. That is 17 years past 50. 17 more than I needed or wanted. Boring. I'm always bitchy. No fun for anybody. 67. You are getting greedy. Act your old age. Relax. This won't hurt."
It was like, something had been somebody just removed something from your body, That's what it felt like.
Hunter, more than most people lived on his own terms, and he was going to do his death on his own terms too.
I respected the fact that he was incapacitated, but I could see how demoralized he was, and I think you put the physical demoralization and debilitation together with the lack of creative juices and energy, and he just said, "Now's the time."
To try to imagine Hunter Thompson, fighting for every last breath in a hospital bed, hooked up to all sorts of tubes, that's just not him.
Sometimes he'd get up in the middle of the night and fire his shotgun off into the night. I thought he'd do something like that. I never thought he'd turn that gun on himself.
He was going to go out when he was ready to go, the way he wanted to go, and he wasn't going to let anybody else decide that for him.
The first instinct was to romanticize the exit. It wasn't completely a heroic ending for Hunter. But on the same token, no one ever told Hunter what he was going to do or how he was going to do it.
By the code by which he lived, which included Hemingway's code, there is a moment when you ask what's next, and you ask it with totality, and you reach a fullness where you just have to go.
One thing we can never do is completely get inside another person's head. Who knows what Hemingway was thinking of? Who knows exactly what Hunter was thinking of?
I knew that he'd had some back pains and some illness and so on, but I thought Hunter was a true lover of life. And I always thought that no matter what his health situation was or what problems he was going through, that somehow he'd hang on.
At 67 years old, he had lived a very hard life. He drank regularly since he was about 10 or 11 years old. And as somebody who had things like knee problems and hip replacement and had a number of medical ailments, and he did everything he kind of wanted to do.
Hunter could have had a responsible vision of saying, I've done my work here, and I know it's so good where I'm going, I'm on my way.
Now that he's gone, and he's been gone for a year, most of us that were close to him really feel the void. It's not as much fun, and it's not as interesting a world without Hunter.
The whole point of Hunter was, as a messenger to us, was to take control of your own life. Don't be at the beck and call of an institution or let people tell you what to do. Freedom is about personal freedom, and you have the right to live and you have the right to die, and he wanted to die in the fashion that he did.
I'm becoming copacetic with his absence. And one thing I'm really grateful for is the 35 years of friendship and intimate friendship that I had with that man. And I'll never lose that. Can't take that away from me.
Hunter Thompson never acted his age his whole life. He was born old, and he remains forever young. Buy the ticket, he once counseled. Take the ride. But the ticket costs more all the time, and the ride gets a little slower, a little shorter every year. As giddy as Huck Finn at his own funeral, Hunter had been planning his memorial service for more than 30 years. Like his life, his death had to be this elaborate work in progress.
When I got the news that Hunter had made his exit, I remember thinking almost immediately, the canon. We got to do the canon.
There was a video, and I don't know who did it, but Hunter was standing, and in the background was this arched hillside, red clay hillside. And Hunter was describing his property and was describing what he wanted done with his ashes blown out of this Gonzo fist tower.
Oh yes, it's in the will. It's all described. It's going to be a little hard to do, particularly with me gone.
I love the face on the mortician.
I think it'd be a nice monument. After the cremation, we put the ashes in a canister and shoot it out the top of the fist over the valley, and up, gets up about, say, 500 feet up, explodes, and the ashes drift down all over here. And that's it. That's my funeral.
He'd spoken about it when I first went to Owl Farm in 1972. For the first time, he'd said, I'd feel real trapped in this life right now if I didn't know that I could commit suicide at any moment.
Well, it seems we're here today, I don't know, to discuss some kind of idea for a monument.
Why? I think we want to get an estimate and
that sort of thing.
And we had spoken about it, over the years, he brought it up, every now and again, I gotta have I need the canon, That's how I gotta go.
Is this something that you would want to do in the near future?
It's written, well, I'm not sure.
I mean, you're talking about something that maybe you want to do after you die, is what you're saying.
That was 1977, when I went into this West Hollywood mortuary. But he said, well, I really want to talk about, said Hunter, was my memorial thing. It's got to be a tall thing.
A giant chrome sort of a cylinder, more like in a conical sort of round and tapering down to the top, at 150 feet tall, hollow inside.
So how tall were you thinking, sir? I was, 150 foot. Oh, that's pretty high. Where do you propose to put this? He said, well, it's on my land back in Aspen.
This rim of mountains is a giant valley 20 miles across.
Is this property that you own now?
Yeah. You see the top of the red cliffs back there? The edge. Well, the property goes back over the cliffs, so I can do whatever. If I wanted to build a McDonald's, I could do it back there.
Ralph, can you just draw a fist, to show what I mean? A red fist is going to be, but do that. And then I started drawing it as an ordinary fist. And he said, oh, Ralph, no, I've told you so many times. How many more times I got to tell you? 2 thumbs, Ralph, 2 thumbs. You got to bring that one over here.
I told you 1,000 times for 10 years, you've got to put 2 thumbs in the fist.
You put the other thumb. Come on.
I'll put it on there because it's going to be on there in the end.
I know somewhere in his crooked mind, I know that he knew that I was the only one, perhaps loyal enough, perhaps insane enough to attempt it.
Hunter S. Thompson is gonna last forever, 'cause he was always real gone. The laughter and the outrage he forged so bright and fast will never go out of style. Above and beyond his own legend, Hunter S. Thompson will continue to stand for possibility itself. And the more unlikely, the better. He gives us a reason to continue. Or at least a damn good alibi. Maybe it never got weird enough for Hunter, but he distilled that weirdness for the rest of us. Clarified it somehow. And for this act of alchemy, we owe him our enduring thanks.
His legacy finally will be a sane voice in a mad world.
Yeah, that would be very scary if the American public began thinking that, well, this war that we see, U.S. troops massing for assault on Baghdad. Oh, boy. Well, a lot of people are going to be killed in that. And you may be one of them. You could be one of them.
What he did do was inspire devotional encomiums from people who included blood relatives from my own, my son Christopher, and superstar mentors like Tom Wolfe.
Hunter's life, like his work, was one long barbaric yelp, to use Whitman's term, of the drug-fueled freedom and mockery of all conventional proprieties that began in the 1960s. In that enterprise, Hunter was something entirely new, something unique in our literary history.
Ding, ding, it's fun.
There is a feeling with certain people, whether we know them or not, that they're breathing the same air at the same time that we are, that makes the world a better place to live in. Hunter was one of those characters.
Hunter Thompson elicited the same kind of admiration one would feel for a streaker in Queen Victoria's drawing room.
God damn, all right, this is fun.
Hunter's greatest influence was on inspiring people to just have faith in their own feelings and thoughts and do whatever the fuck they wanted to do.
As long as people read American English, Hunter Thompson's voice is going to sing loud and clear.
He had and has such a fervent following. They're passionate, they're loyal, and they see him as a kind of an avatar of a period, of a movement, of a way of thinking, and of a way of writing.
Well, this is a groove of some kind.
Him as a person, as a friend, as a human being changed my life in so many different levels. First as a writer, as an author, as a, author to a reader. Me being a huge fan of his work. That changed my life.
50, 100 years from now, people will study him. He knew it. He saw it.
He wasn't just a guy on a soapbox. He was a guy on a soapbox who inspired people and touched people and amused people.
In this war, it's a case of wasted time and wasted energy. What is possibly in it for a person fighting on the front lines? What is in it for them to assault some Muslim somewhere in a house in the city? Like, if I were there, I would have to think, well, what's in it for me? I'll be a good soldier.
I can hear my father's voice, and I can hear a few other voices that have years since gone on somewhere. I have no concern that I'm going to lose track of Hunter's voice.
You look at Hunter's best stuff, it's all a search. He's looking for something. And the blessing of it is he's having a hell of a time as he does it.
Hi.
I've been away for a while. Yeah, I got pretty excited about these handcuffs.
I think Hunter was always a viable alternative for those who could find him. And it was good that we had him for as long as we had him.
You pick up any of his writing, and man, you can hear that voice as clear as it's sitting next to you. You know, he left it hot damn.
Oh, boy. This is going to be a big reach into the ether.
Dear Hunter, I regret that we never got to spend time together, just the two of us, talking for hours about everything. Like, what's the answer? There is none. And existence and everything. Anyway, I'll see you soon. Be well, and here's a little line from a Vietnamese monk, a Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. The tears I shed yesterday have become rain. You are loved. Harry Dean.
I am a roadman.
A what?
A roadman.
A roadman.
For the Lords of Karma.
Yeah.
For the Great Hall.
Yeah.
I know what happens to you, me, and everyone else when they supposedly die. It's a passage around the Great Loop.
I was going to sing it at the ceremony, but somehow or other they forgot, and so I'm going to sing it here. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the leaves are falling. It's you must go and I must bide. But come you back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. It's I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so.